Okay, guys, can you guys see my screen now? Hello, guys, can you see my screen? Hello?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, okay. So I think we stopped that. So we stopped that the third pharyngeal arch. So um, no, no, I think we stopped at the second pharyngeal arch. Yes. So I said, just recap the first pharyngeal arch. Um, the nerve that supplies the product of the first pharyngeal arch is the mandibular nerve. And what are the muscles that are derived from the first pharyngeal arch? The muscles of mastication, which includes the temporalis, the masseter, the lateral and the medial pterygoids. Then I told us about the hems, the muscle of mastication, and the mylohyoid. That's a quick way to remember. Then you remember the A's too, the anterior belly of the digastric muscle, the anterior two-thirds of the tongue, then the T's. So the acronym can just be MAT, MAT. So the T's will be your tensor veli palatini, as well as the tensor tympani. Tensor tympani in the hair, tensor veli palatini of the soft palate. So once you are done with the muscle, you go to the bones. The bones, we should not forget, they are derived from the neural crest. The muscles and the arteries are from the mesoderm. The nerves, if it's motor, is from the neuroectoderm. If it's sensory, it is from the neural crest. So the cartilage, the way to remember it is just to remember the two processes, the maxillary process and the mandibular process. So I told us that the maxillary process just gives rise to the maxilla and the zygomatic bone together, forming the cheek, while the mandibular process gives rise to the mandible itself as well as the Merkel cartilage and the sphenomandibular ligament. So what is the derivative of the Merkel cartilage? The malleus and the incus. The mandibular process will form the mandible proper as well as the sphenomandibular ligament. So those are the three things: the Merkel cartilage, the mandible itself, and the sphenomandibular ligament. We'll go to the second arch. The nerve that supplies the second arch is the facial nerve. So that means that the other structures, the other muscles that be coming from the second pharyngeal nerve will be supplied by the facial nerve. So if you can remember your anatomy very well and you know the structures that are supplied by the facial nerve, you cannot be wrong. You always get there. So, and of course, that one is very straightforward. Muscles of facial expression, they are supplied by the facial nerve. So they are derivative of the second pharyngeal arch. We know that the stapedius is also supplied by the facial nerve. So that's the one that helps to also dampen loud noises. Stapedius muscle in the hair, it's supplied by the facial nerve. The stylohyoid muscle, the platysmal muscle in the neck that invests the fascial of the neck, is also supplied by the cervical branch of the facial nerve. Then lastly, the posterior belly of the digastric. Once we know that the anterior belly of the digastric is coming from the first arch, we know that the posterior belly is coming from the second arch. So the P's, platysma and the posterior belly, the hairs, stapedius and stylohyoid, then the muscles of facial expression. So if you can just remember this stylohyoid, it will save you a lot of stress, because you know that okay, the ligament, stylohyoid ligament, is also product of the cartilage and is also product of the muscular product of the second pharyngeal. So once you remember stylohyoid, so stylohyoid is giving the ligament and is also giving the muscle. Stylohyoid, stylohyoid. Now this stylohyoid, what are the components? Styloid and the hyoid. Styloid and the hyoid. So the styloid process and the lesser horn of the hyoid. Then lastly, the stapes, because we've said here that the first arch gives rise to the malleus and the incus. So the remaining one is the stapes. So the stapes is also part of the bony component of your second pharyngeal arch. So let's take it again. If you want to remember the muscles that are coming from the second pharyngeal arch, just remember the S and the P's. So what are the S? Stylohyoid muscle and the stapes. So what are the P's? Posterior belly of the digastric and the platysmal. So once you can remember any one of them, you can always know which one will follow. Okay, you remember, okay, stapes. or stylohyoid. So what's the other hairs? Stapedius. If you remember stapedius, what's the other hairs? Stylohyoid. If it's platysma that you remember firstly, what's the other hairs? Posterior belly of what's the other P? Posterior belly of digastric. If it's posterior belly that you remember first, what's the other P? Platysma. So then you remember your stylohyoid again in order to know the bones. Stylohyoid, styloid process, which is the stylo part, and the lesser horn of the hyoid bone, as well as the stylohyoid ligament, from the conjunction of the name. Then lastly, the stapes. Everything has S in it too. The stapes, the styloid process, the lesser horn, S, you can see here, as well as the stylohyoid ligament. You guys should just familiarize yourself with it. With time, you will learn it very well and it will stay. And they are all coming from the richet cartilage, unlike the Merkel cartilage in the first pharyngeal arch. All these ones are coming from the richet cartilage of the second pharyngeal arch. So let's go down. The third one is very easy. The third pharyngeal nerve arch is supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. Very easy. And it gives us only one muscle. Supplies only one muscle, which is used for swallowing. The stylopharyngeus muscle. And what's the bony component of the third pharyngeal arch? The greater horn of hyoid. The lesser horn of hyoid is coming from the second. The greater horn is coming from the third. Very easy to know. Then we go to the fourth and the sixth. So the fourth and the sixth actually form joint structures. So they share the structures together, especially the bones. So, but they have separate muscles, separate nerves. Although the nerve is actually commonly the vagus, it's just that there are different branches from the vagus. The fourth is supplied by the superior laryngeal branch of vagus. The sixth is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal branch of the vagus. Now, one thing we usually learn in our medical school then is that recurrent laryngeal nerve is involved in voice production. So that means that all the muscles that are involved in production of voice, that is the laryngeal muscles, the voice box, will be innervated by the recurrent or the inferior laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of the vagus now. Now, all those muscles except the cricothyroid is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve, just like we can see here. All those intrinsic muscles of the larynx, except the cricothyroid, is supplied by the recurrent laryngeal nerve. Why the fourth is supplied by the superior laryngeal nerve, and it supplies most of most of the pharyngeal constrictors. We have so many pharyngeal constrictors. You guys should not worry about the name. You see muscle like lateral thyroarytenoid, the transverse thyroarytenoid, the cricoarytenoid, and the likes. Don't worry. Just know that the pharyngeal constrictors are derived from the mesenchyme of the fourth pharyngeal arch. And of course, we've said that the intrinsic muscles of the larynx are coming from the sixth arch, except the cricothyroid. So the cricothyroid is coming from the fourth. Then the levator veli palatini is coming from the fourth. So where is the tensor veli palatini coming from? Anybody?
The first pharyngeal arc.
Yeah. So the tensor veli palatini is coming from the first, while the levator veli palatini is coming from the fourth. Both of them actually assist each other. They want to tense the soft part so that you can elevate it and prevent food when you are swallowing from entering the nasopharynx. That's what they do. So then they collectively form these bones of the larynx. You can just remember your cricoid first, your thyroid, because they follow each other, cricothyroid. So cricothyroid. So cricoid, thyroid cartilage, then the C's, the corniculate and the cuneiform. Then lastly, the arytenoid. So that's the way me I remember them. Cricoid, thyroid, corniculate, cuneiform, and arytenoid. So this is the code, but I don't know if it works for you. You can use it. So the posterior one third of the tongue is actually formed from the third and the fourth. So it should be with the muzzle. It should be with the muzzle, but because it's collectively being formed, that's why they separated it. Your posterior one third is also part of the muzzle. So posterior one third of the tongue is formed from joining of both the third and the fourth. What forms the anterior two third of the tongue? Where is it coming from?
First up.
Yeah, so the first arc gives you anterior two third of the tongue, while the third and the fourth give rise to the posterior one third of the tongue. They mentioned this stuff too when we're doing neuro. is there. So the arch 5, which is the fifth one, degenerates. It doesn't give any developmental contribution. So that is all about the. So now let's just talk about the clinical correlate.
Mr. Babali, how do you remember these things? I'm genuinely
I was
concerned.
just about to ask the same question because I was like, honestly,
Because
because
I
this
feel so
page,
stupid.
hey, I was
No,
about to ask the same question,
no,
Dr. Toby. You took the words right out of my mouth.
no, guys. To be honest, I will not
Yeah,
lie to you.
how is
I will not
moving
lie
it?
to you,
And I wish I could see your mouth. I would just be looking, wow.
guys. Guys, I will not
I
lie to
know,
you.
right?
I will not lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get it. I didn't remember everything too the first attempt. I think it was when I was now, looking at it frequently that it stayed. So that's just my advice for you. But I feel that if you go by that approach that I used, you guys will remember. I didn't use this approach initially. Just know that okay, first arch, mandibular, that one has stayed. That one is not. That one you don't need anything to remember that one. First, mandibular. Second, facial. Third, glossopharyngeal. The fourth and the sixth. Fourth is superior laryngeal. Sixth is our recurrent. Now let's go to the muscles. No, let's leave the muscle. Let's go to the cartilage. If I want to remember the cartilage, the first thing that I'll picture is that okay, the cartilage. I'm looking at the cheek. First, mandibular and maxillary process. Mandibular and maxillary process, number one. Now, that maxillary process, you are expecting two things from it. You are looking at the cheek. What is forming the cheek? The zygomatic and the maxillary bone. The zygomatic and the maxillary bone. Then you go to the mandibular process. The mandibular process will give the mandible itself because the maxillary process is already giving the maxillae. So what will give the mandible? The mandibular process. Now, you remember the Merkel cartilage. The Merkel cartilage only gives rise to structures in the hair, which is very close to the cheek. If you trace it, like if you trace your zygomatical maxillary connection at the cheek, you trace it backwards, you are pointing towards the hair. So the Merkel cartilage forms structures in the hair. So what are these structures? The malleus and the incus, but not the stapes. Anything S should be second pharyngeal arch. All these S structure, second pharyngeal arch. So my malleus and the incus is the hair from the Merkel cartilage. So I've talked about the mandible. Then the last thing is another mandibular structure, which is the sphenomandibular ligament. I know that sphenomandibular ligament is coming from the first, while the stylohyoid ligament is coming from the second. Those are the only two ligaments that you need to remember. The sphenomandibular ligament from first, stylohyoid ligament from second. You are done. You are done. Then you go to the muscles. Okay, muscles. The
So,
mandibular nerve.
Babali, yeah, let me, so ST,
Mm-hmm.
ST, P before T, P1, T2, right?
This your code is confusing me already.
You said spleno and and steno, right?
Yeah, I said
Maybe you should first
splenomandibular.
say what they stand
Are you
for so
talking
I
about the
can.
ligament?
Ligament,
Okay, so what are the two ligaments that you know?
Spheno.
Spheno is for first and the
sphenomandibular
stylo is
and
for second.
And what?
stylo,
And stylo what?
and stylo, yes.
Stylo what? You have to pronounce it fully, because you
Oh,
have
Stylohyoid.
stylohyoid.
stylohyoid. So where is the sphenomandibular ligament belonging to?
One, that will be one now,
One,
along with the maxilla and the likes.
you get.
Yes.
So where is the
Yes,
um
mandibular MM.
mhm,
Yes,
mhm.
okay.
So where is this
Okay. So,
stylohyoid ligament belonging to?
sta- stylohyoid will now be second.
The second. Now you have remembered stylohyoid ligament. That means you must remember stylohyoid muscle too, Abi now.
Yes, that makes sense. Yes,
So
yes,
you
it's
have
making
remembered
sense
stylohyoid
now.
ligament. That means you must remember stylo
Mm.
process from the stylo process.
Yes,
Then you must remember
yes, yes.
lesser on of the hyoid.
Mm-hmm.
Because hyoid is in stellohyoid, so lesser on of hyoid. Okay,
Because
okay,
you know that greater on
okay,
is hyoid, that one is standing alone, that one is third, that one is not touched. Like it's part of the third. So greater horn is part of the. So lesser horn is the one
okay.
that is the second.
The
So
third, okay,
so
okay.
you have remembered stylohyoid ligament, stylo process. Then the hyoid component is the lesser horn of hyoid. That means you
Hyoid.
have already talked about all the components of rigid cartilage. The only one that is left is the stapes.
Okay.
So and you remember that in the first arch, you've talked about the Merkel cartilage giving rise to the malleus and the incus. So it
And
remains
the
the step.
impulse, yes.
So it remains the step.
Yes.
So the step is part
Yes.
of the your second pharyngeal arch.
Second. Makes
You
sense.
just remember that
Yeah.
for the bone part of the second pharyngeal arch, you are talking about 4 things. 4 things. What are the 4 things? You have to remember your stylohyoid ligament first. So stylohyoid ligament will give rise to 2 things extra: the stylo process and the lesser horn of the hyoid. So what's the last one? Stapes. S. Stapes is complete. Can you guys? Hello.
That makes a lot of sense. At least I know that
Yes,
all
that was
the
really helpful.
most of the S structures are the
Mm-hmm.
second.
A
S
second.
second.
Mm-hmm.
So we go for the styloid first. So with the stylohyoid,
Mm-hmm.
we get to the lesser one of the hyoid because it's
Mm-hmm.
sounding hyoid,
Mm-hmm.
stylohyoid.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go for the styloid process, stylo.
Mm-hmm.
Then we go for stapes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that means you are left with the muzzle. You are left with the muzzle.
Okay.
So the
Trapezius muscle.
yeah. So you guys can ask
Okay.
yourself. With time now, it will get spinal. I'm sure. You guys, it will get spinal.
Doctor Zulia don't worry. Say it. She learns better when she says it with her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, say it yourself
Who
too.
wants to say this one now?
I
Yeah,
would try.
I think I've gotten the second one now.
Mm-hmm. So if you guys know these first two, the other ones are very easy. This is the complex one that is there.
Actually, the first two it looks easier to me now. I'm telling you. You see,
Yes,
the
now.
last ones are
Yeah.
the ones that are now somehow to me now.
Don't
I
worry,
mean,
Because the first one is a lot of M's. So
yeah, a lot
You
of
yeah, and the
M's.
second
get
one
the
is a lot of
mandibular
S.
mandibular.
mastication,
Yes.
my maxillary mandibular malleus,
Malleus
M.
incus. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sphenomandibular. Zygomatic bone. Merkel cartilage. M.
So the ones that are not in keeping is just the sphenomandibular ligament. So you'll have mentioned your sphenomandibular ligament separate before you now remember, maxillary and mandibular process. So mandibular process will give Merkel and mandible.
Yeah.
That means you are
Yeah.
done. So you already know what is coming from your Merkel cartilage, your malleus and your incus. Very easy. You just move. So yeah, so the muscle of the facial expression, stapedius, is supplied by the facial nerve. I also talked about the platysma being supplied by the cervical branch of facial nerve. So once you remember those two muscles, you are done. You just remember, stapedius. What other S is there? Stylohyoid. Because you've mentioned your stylohyoid ligament. So stylohyoid muscle. There are no, you can use different approach to remember all these things. If you have mentioned stylohyoid ligament, you know that there will be a stylohyoid muscle too. So what's the other S? Stapedius. I remember that, the platysma is supplied by the cervical branch of facial nerve. What is the other P? Posterior belly of digastric. Okay, if I didn't remember that one, I know that first pharyngeal arch give rise to the anterior belly. So that means second give rise to the posterior belly. That's a P. So what's the other P? Platysma. So with time, you guys will be conversant with this thing. But I believe that if they bring it out in question, though I've not really seen question on the first and the second, but I think I've seen some question on the third and the fourth and the sixth and the third. But if they bring it out directly in question, you guys will remember. Like for example, even if you guys cannot say it, if you guys see it in question, you will remember. Okay, if they ask you now, where's the posterior belly of digastric coming from? You cannot go and say third now, and you cannot say first because you know that first is anterior. So you already remember that it will be second. I don't know if you guys get
Mm-hmm.
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If they ask you directly, you will remember.
Right. Yeah, I'm also looking at the aortic arc derivatives for the one that we learned in cardio.
Superior.
Mm-hmm.
So you know
Dr.
the
Fatou,
first
I got
one,
something for that. Remember
right?
LR6. Remember LR6. LR6
Mm-hmm.
SO4. The sixth one has the
Okay.
lateral, the sixth one has the left. Sixth is
Mm-hmm.
left. So that will be left
Yes.
recurrent laryngeal. Do you get that? And that will be the
Yep.
PDA. Then one
That's
for the fourth. Fourth is
mm-hmm.
four limbs, aortic arc. and then it will be right.
Right.
Fourth will be right. So it will be LR6.
But the
Am I saying
LR
the
is what
right
I'm not
thing?
getting. So the sixth one
L
is
L.
So the
recurrent
arch is for
laryngeal
like
branch.
left,
Okay.
So it will be
recurrent
LR6. The
laryngeal.
sixth arch. The sixth arch is the left recurrent. So
Right,
that means
right,
the
right. Makes
fourth will be the
sense.
right. Do you get it?
Okay.
LR
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes.
LR6. LR6.
Okay.
You know it is LR6. You can never say LR5. It's never
All four.
LR5.
Yeah.
It is always
Yeah.
LR6. So you know
LR6.
that, okay,
Yeah.
so the sixth arch would have the left recurrent laryngeal, and then the sixth
Okay.
arch would also have the PDA. Yeah.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then for the first and the second, you see the first gives rise part of the
Hello?
maxillateral artery and the hyoid artery. Sorry.
Yes.
And over here, the cartilage too. We have the stapes and then the whole lesser horn of hyoid.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So
Yeah, yeah. So maybe if we try and put those together, it might help us.
it
I don't
will
know.
help. Yeah. Hmm.
You
Yeah.
guys know that,
I-
okay, you can see
Okay.
now, second pharyngeal arch is the one that's giving rise to the stapedial artery and the hyoidal artery.
Actually,
You guys can see here
yeah.
that it's also forming the stapedial muscle
Exactly.
and the
And
hyoidal,
it's
structure.
the
Yes.
lesser on of
Yes.
the iod, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
The greater
Yeah.
one is by the third arch.
The greater one will be the third. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
so the artery that is coming from the third is our common carotid and proximal
Common
Common
aspect
carotid, yes,
carotid.
carotid.
proximal
It's the
aspect of
third
Mm-hmm.
the
letter
That
of
one
the
we've even seen a
alphabet.
question on it. Do you guys remember?
Yeah, a lot of
Somebody
questions there.
collapsed and then they palpate the artery and they ask
Mm-hmm.
you it's a
Yeah.
derivative of which
Yeah.
aortic arc.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's
So you will not forget LR6. So. Mm-hmm.
No, 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 we won't. Thank you.
okay. But I know that very soon you guys will be familiar with this thing. You will not be using code. Trust me, you will see. It's just with time. So then the fourth and the sixth. We said that the fourth is the superior laryngeal, the sixth is the recurrent. So when I said the quick way to just remember is that recurrent supplies all the intrinsic muscles of the larynx that are used to make voice, except cricothyroid. You are done. So just carry up, just bring that cricothyroid towards the fourth. Add it to the fourth. Then, in addition to that, add your levator, belly palatini, and the pharyngeal constrictors. Pharyngeal constrictors, the cricothyroid, and the levator belly palatini. Mm. If you guys can say these three, you are done. Pharyngeal constrictors, cricothyroid, and the levator belly palatini, they are coming from fourth. Why all the intrinsic muscles of the larynx, except cricothyroid, is coming from sixth. Is that Dr. Francois, do you want to try that?
Okay, so we are talking about the fourth and the sixth, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, so I remember what Dr. Toby said about LR6. So I remember that the sixth arc gives rise to the recurrent laryngeal branch
Mm-hmm,
of the vagus nerve.
mm-hmm.
The fourth one should be the superior laryngeal branch.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Then which one again? Okay, the other ones are not the cartilage. I remember the ACCT. Yeah,
Okay.
ACCT.
Are you sure you're going to remember
Arytenoid
all of that later?
acts. I'm trying to see how to put this in my head. Sorry, I think I have to find a way of coding it
Put it.
better.
Yeah. So the way I advise is that remember the cricoid and the thyroid. The cricoid and the thyroid cartilage are very close to each other. The
Okay.
cricoid cartilage, the thyroid cartilage. Know that those ones
Okay.
first. Then you now
Okay.
remember the ACC. Corniculate and cuneiform sound similar. Corniculate, cuneiform, corniculate,
Follicular, cuneiform.
cuneiform.
Okay.
Then you just add your arytenoid. Arytenoid. That's it.
These are retinoids. Where are they?
They're also part of the cartilage surrounding the voice box. They make the voice box. They are within the
Okay.
larynx. They are within the
Okay.
larynx. Yeah. So cricoid, thyroid, cricoid, thyroid, cricoid, thyroid. Then corniculate,
Thyroid.
cricoid,
Corniculate,
thyroid.
cuneiform.
Mm-hmm. Then corniculate cuneiform arytenoid. You can see that it's easy.
Retinoids.
I,
Yeah.
I think I can try. I feel like trying.
Okay.
Okay. So we have the fourth and the sixth hack. The one that we remember first of all is the sixth hack, which is the um recurrent laryngeal or the inferior laryngeal nerve, and then they supply most of the larynx except what's it called, the cricothyroid,
Mhm.
right? Is it most of the larynx muscle? Yeah, except the cricothyroid. And then the fourth one is kind of the superior laryngeal nerve, and that's supplying like I'm coming out. So it's supplying like the pharynx, the pharyngeal
You,
aspect of it, and that would be maybe. Am I wrong?
you don't remember the muscles. Don't remember the type of muscle. Just know the pharyngeal constrictors that used to swallow. Mm? The pharyngeal constrictors.
Mhm. So okay, the pharyngeal constrictors,
Okay.
and then the elevator villi palatina. What do you say it was related to? It was like opposite of something,
No,
opposite of
no,
the tensor
no. I
villi.
didn't say it's opposite. I said they work together. So tensor assists the levator. Tensor will tense, levator will elevate the soft palate
Okay,
so that
okay,
they can prevent food from entering the nasopharynx when they are swallowing. So that means that they work with
okay,
muscles that are involved in swallowing. You can use that one to remember it. So levator works with muscles that are involved in swallowing so that it protects the nasopharynx. So what are the muscles that are involved in
okay.
swallowing? Pharyngeal constrictors. Pharyngeal constrictors.
Pharyngeal constrictors, and then the elevator villi
Levator.
palatini. Okay.
Then the odd
And
ones
I
are
remember that
separated.
the cricothyroid is not
Mhm.
supplied by the one below, so therefore it will be supplied by the one above.
Above.
Okay, the
So those
fourth
are the
arc. So
three.
yeah,
Those are the three
yeah.
for the fourth. Then you now talk about your cricothyroid because you
The
see,
cartilage.
you already said there's a muscle called cricothyroid, so you can be using your cricoid
Mm-hmm.
and your thyroid cartilage to remember that one too. Cricoid cartilage, thyroid
Mm-hmm.
cartilage, cricothyroid muscle.
Yeah, cricoid yeah, okay. We have the cricoid cartilage, the thyroid cartilage,
Mhm.
then we have the cuneiform, the coniculate, and then we just had the arytenoid
You
to
see
it.
now, it's very easy. With time, you just be flowing. You not even remember any acronym. So that is it.
Okay.
So then you remember that the tongue too, posterior one third of the tongue is from the third and the fourth. Don't
The
forget
third act. Okay.
the third and the fourth. So the reason why they are not separating it is that that is the third and the fourth that is forming it. So they cannot put it with the muscle. Unlike in the first arc, they put anterior two third with the first because it's only the first that is forming
Mm-hmm.
it. But here, the
Okay.
third and the fourth is the one that is forming the posterior one third. So that's why I just put it here. So your third and your fourth give rise to your posterior one third. Don't forget that one is you must remember that one. Don't forget it. Your third and your fourth forms your posterior one third. Fifth arch forms nothing. Okay. So I think I'm sure we'll be able to remember it a little now. Mm? Abi now, guys. I think we are getting close to
Yes, so
learning
we're
everything.
getting there.
So then let's just note these two um, problems. So the first thing I want you to remember is that almost everything that is in Pierre Robin is in Tricia Collins. The only thing is that in Tricia Collins you don't have problem with the zygomatic bone and hearing loss. So anything you can picture that is happening in Pierre Robins will actually happen in Tricia Collins. But in Tricia Collins, the zygomatic bone is all right, and there is no hearing problem. Sorry, there's what am I saying? I'm sorry about that, guys. In Tricia Collins, you have two additional problems that are not in Pierre Robin. There's problem with the zygomatic bone and there's problem with hearing. That is it. Bones of the hair is problematic in the Tricia Collins. Both of them are actually caused by problems involving the first and the second pharyngeal arch. So let's look at the constellation. Let me give you the quick way to remember it. In Pierre Robin, the first thing you remember is that there is problem with the mandible. Mandible is very small. That's why they call it micrognathia. Small mandible. That's first thing. Now, when the mandible is small, that means that there's nothing to accommodate that tongue anteriorly. Just picture it that way, that there's nothing for the tongue to rest on anteriorly. So that means the tongue will be falling backwards. So they are going to have glossoptosis. And when the tongue falls backwards, there's going to be airway obstruction because the person can suffocate. Then you just add your cleft palate to it. That is it. Airway obstruction, then cleft palate. That is it. So remember your micrognathia or your mandibular hypoplasia that will cause the tongue to fall backwards, obstruct the airway, then you have your cleft palate. Is that easy for you guys? Hello, guys. You guys are not answering.
So sorry. So is Pierre Robin? Is it? Did you say it's a failure of both the first and second pharyngeal arches to develop?
Which one? Hello? 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 Can you guys hear me? Ah, God, what's happening here?
You,
Hello?
I'm expecting Dr. Baba, so
That's about
Dr. Baba
Yes,
is
yes.
like
I'm listening now. What
not
did you
hearing
guys say?
you.
What did you say? What did you say?
I was asking about Pierre Robin. I was
Okay.
asking whether Pierre Robin was a failure of both the first and second pharyngeal arches to develop. Like,
Okay. No, no. Pierre is actually more of the first. It is the trichacholine that is taking both. That is why trichacholine can
okay,
have problem with hearing because both the stapes, the
okay.
bolus, the incus, everything is gone.
And
So
then the
Pierre Robin
stitches are
has to do
affected.
with just the first.
Yes. Pierre is predominantly the
Okay.
first. Because if you look at all the problems in Pierre, the first can explain everything. Look at it.
Right.
The
Mm-hmm.
the macrognathia, the mandible,
Microbiota.
it is a mandible.
Yeah.
The
Mm-hmm.
glossoptos, now you guys can see is a sequence. Is a sequence. And you remember what we said about sequence. Sequence is just one problem
Yeah.
leading to the other. So
Leading to others.
so
Yeah.
this macroglottal is one that is causing the glossoptosis and is the one that is bringing about the airway obstruction.
Okay.
So this cleft palate is actually related to the problem of formation of the maxillae. So because we'll get there, if you cannot have joining of the maxillae to form the intermaxillary segment, you have problem with the cleft palate.
Right.
So that is it. So the maxillae and the mandible.
Sorry, what did you say the glossoptosis is?
So
Sorry, I
backward
lost.
falling of the tongue, glossoptosis,
Okay.
backward falling of the
Okay.
tongue. So the tongue goes backwards and blocks the airway.
Okay.
So
Leading to the airway obstruction.
leading to the airway obstruction. So the cause of the tongue falling backwards is actually due to the macrognathia.
Okay.
So that's the way it works. The macrognathia is due to the
So
mandibular.
apart from the Pierre
Huh?
Robin and the Porter, which other sequences? Apart from Pierre Robin and Porter, which other sequences do we have? Are
I
there
don't
plenty
I don't
sequences?
know. I don't know any other one though. I think those are the only ones
Okay, that's fine.
that I know. Mhm.
That's fine. Okay. All right.
So the Tucker-Collins syndrome is due to an autosomal dominant problem I share with neural crest dysfunction. So you guys remember that the neural crest is one that is involved in the formation of the skull bones. So that means that if the neural crest fails to migrate into this arch, you have abnormality formation of this bone. And what are these bones that are majorly affected? The zygomatic and the mandibular, as well as the air bones. That is all. You can see that there's no zygomatic problem in Pierre Robin. So once you are seeing zygomatic hypoplasia, you are not thinking of Pierre Robin. No. It is your trichacholine. Let me show us a picture of trichacholine so that we can appreciate what it looks. You see the hairs. The hairs will not be there. And I ought to have, you know, although they look very similar, they look very similar. I think I've seen. So the presentation is actually much, but let's just stick with what we have in our course. We can't be learning everything. So problem with speech because of the cleft palate, of course. Problem with chewing. Sorry, guys, are you guys still with me? Because it seems my network is slow. Hello? Hello, can you guys hear me? Hello? So I'm just trying to show us how the Tuchacolis look like. So this is it. So they have, problem with the formation of the cheek. I'm trying to look for one that is very clear. So like this guy now. Hello, are you guys still there?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So this one is not too very clear, but you can see that the hairs are very small, you know, and even the bones of the hairs are not formed, so they cannot even hear. Then the cheekbones too are underdeveloped. Then the mandible is very small. You have a very small jaw. So this is once you see something that looks like you know that this is likely to be your Twitter Collins. So this is the way they present. I'm trying to see if I can look for it. So you can see that the cheekbones are underdeveloped. The jaw too is very small. So the hairs too is small, and of course the because the hair bones there they are apoplastic. So that's the way they look like. So I think we should continue. So you guys know the difference between Twitter Collins and the Pierobi. So in Twitter Collins, there's problem with the zygomatic bone and hearing loss. The other ones are the same. So you have mandibular hypoplasia too. They have these Twitter Collins people also have prosoptosis. Their tongue also falls backward that causes the airway compromise. But the only additional thing is the hearing loss due to the absence of the small bones of the hair and the zygomatic hypoplasia that they have. So are you guys still with me? I'm
Yeah.
just trying to check for my network. Okay, yes. So let's go to the formation of the lip and the palate. They test these ones a lot, and it's very easy. So most of them they have multifactorial etiology. They can be idiopathic. They can even be caused by maybe exposure to the teratogens, unitero. So if you are exposed to some antiepileptic drug like phenytoin, they can develop there's a lot of them that can cause cleft lip and palate. So they usually coexist, but sometimes they can occur separately. So what brings about formation of the cleft lip? Now I want you guys to observe this image very well. Now the problem of the cleft lip is due to the failure of margin of the medial nasal um, processes. So you guys can see there's um, the the um, the the medial nasal processes. They fuse together to form the intermaxillary segment, which is this one. So this one here fuse together to form the intermaxillary segment. It is this intermaxillary segment that will now fuse with the maxillary process beside it. These guys here, they fuse with this guy to form the primary palate, which develops into structures that forms the lip and part of the palate too. So if you have problems with merging of the medial nasal processes with the maxillary processes to form the primary palate, you have problem with the lips. Keep that like that. The next thing is to look at the problem of cleft palate. The problem of cleft palate is due to problem with fusion of the palatal structures. What are the palatal structures? The lateral palatal shelf. There are two. These are those guys. This is the first one. This is the second one. The palatine shape. There are two lateral palatine shapes. This guy and this guy. Normally, they are supposed to fuse together in the midline to form the secondary palate. So they are supposed to fuse together to form the palate in the mouth, that palate. But if they do not fuse, you can have cleft palate. That's one way. Another way is if one of these lateral palatine shelves fails to fuse with the nasal septum, you can also have a defect in that area. You can have it here or here. Or this same palatine shelf fails to fuse with your primary palate that you have formed by fusion of the medial nasal processes with the maxillary process. Do you guys get it, or I should come again?
Please come again.
Okay, so let's start with the lip. The lip is very easy. You just look for your medial nasal process. It's supposed to fuse with the maxillary process. These are the maxillary processes. They are supposed to fuse with the medial nasal processes in order to form the primary palate. This is the primary. They form the sorry. In order to form the sorry, I've made a mistake. You are supposed to have um, um, fusion of the intermaxillary segment. This is the intermaxillary segment. The intermaxillary segment is actually formed by joining of the medial nasal processes. When your two medial nasal processes joins together, they form the intermaxillary segment. The intermaxillary segment is supposed to now fuse with the maxillary processes to form the primary palate, which is this guy. If that fails to occur, you have problem with the lip. The lip, because you know that the lip is superior to the palate, so anything above will form the problem of the lip first. Problem of the palate is the one that is below, which are these areas. So let's go over it again. Failure of fusion of the medial nasal processes to form the intermaxillary segment. This intermaxillary segment doesn't form and it fails to fuse with the maxillary segment too. So the problem can be in any level. Is it that the medial nasal processes fails to fuse together to form the intermaxillary segment, or the intermaxillary segment is formed but it fails to fuse with the maxillary processes to form the primary palate. So if the primary palate is not being formed, you have cleft lip. That is that. For the palate, you just look for your palatine shelves. There are two. Your lateral palatine shelf, this one here, and the second palatine shelf, this guy. They're supposed to fuse together in the midline to form the palate, to form the secondary palate. If you don't have fusion of the lateral palatine shelf to form the secondary palate, you can have cleft palate. That's one mechanism. Or this palatine shelf fails to fuse with the nasal septum that is in between them, they can develop cleft palate. Or they fails to fuse with the primary palate that is formed from joining of the intermaxillary segment with the maxillary process. Do you guys get it now?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you are supposed to have your medial nasal process joining together to form the intermaxillary segment.
Intermaxillary segment.
Yes. So
And then
intermaxillary
now that
segment
intermaxillary segment is supposed
join with the what?
to
It's supposed
fuse with the
Very
process
is supposed to join with the
to
maxillary
form the
process to
primary
form
palate.
the primary palate.
good.
So any problem with
The
that
primary
one will form
palate.
cleft lip. So the problem with cleft palate is that if there is failure of fusion of the lateral palatine shelf, number one, or one of the palatine shelves fails to fuse with the nasal septum, number two, or lateral palatine shelf fails to fuse with the primary palate, number three. So if it fails to fuse with the primary palate, or maybe because the primary palate fails to develop, that means you can have cleft lip and cleft palate. Because if the primary palate fails to develop, you might not be able to fuse this guy with this primary palate. So that means there's possibility of the person developing cleft palate. And of course, because you do not form the primary palate, there's also possibility of the person developing cleft lip. That's why they will say that they can coexist together. But if this person actually forms the the primary palate, but and the two lateral processes, the two lateral palatal shelf fails to fuse together, you can have isolated cleft palate. So, you know, everything just works together to complete the formation of the palate. This one has to fuse with this one to form palate in this area. This one has to fuse with this one to form palate in this area. This guy has to fuse with this one to form the palate in this area. Do you guys get it?
Yeah.
So that's the way it works. So let us go to the genital embryology. So for the genital embryology, the first thing that you must know is that there are three different aspects to it. Number one, the gonad. Number two, the internal duct, which are these ones, your paramesonephric duct and your mesonephric duct. Then number three, the external genitalia. So you can see that these gonads here, they are indifferent. So you don't know if it's that of the guy or that of the lady. The way to know, or what will determine if the gonad is going to differentiate towards the pathway of the male or the female, is if that person has a testis. So if the embryo, the or the baby, the fetus has a testis, um sorry, I said testis, Y chromosome. Sorry guys, I'm very sorry about that. Has a Y chromosome.
Okay, okay.
So if the if the fetus, the embryo, has the Y chromosome, that is, the chromosomal sex is XY. Fetus has the Y chromosome. That Y chromosome contains the sex determining region within it. That's one of the regions within the Y chromosome. And that region codes for a gene that we call testis determining factor. Testis determining factor. Now, the testis determining factor will stimulate that gonad that is indifferent to develop towards the testicular pathway. So it will make that indifferent gonad develop towards the testis. Now, in females, they don't have Y chromosome, they have XX. So that means there's no sex determining region on Y chromosome in them. There's no sex determining region on the X chromosome. So that means there's no gene called the testis determining factor. So that means the gonad do not differentiate towards the testes. They are going to differentiate towards the ovaries. That's the way it goes. Now, when that one happens, let's say we are still looking towards the male pathway. The testis has developed. So, the testis contains the seminiferous tubules. The seminiferous tubules are lined by some cells, including the Sertoli cells and spermatogonia. Outside the seminiferous tubules, we have the Leydig cells. Now, your Sertoli cells secrete what we call an hormone that we call the Mullerian inhibitory factor, MIF. Some people will call it anti-Mullerian hormone, AMH, any one of it. Sertoli cells secrete Mullerian inhibitory factor or anti-Mullerian hormone. Now, your Leydig cells secrete androgens, testosterone. Now, we've talked about the gonads. The next thing is to look at the internal duct. There are two internal ducts in an indifferent embryo. What are they? The mesonephric duct, which is this one here, or the paramesonephric duct, which is just the one that are parallel to it by the side, paramesonephric and the mesonephric. So if this gonad has differentiated towards the testis axis, the testis is going to secrete the um is going to differentiate into the Sertoli cells, and the Sertoli cells will now produce the Mullerian inhibitory factor. Another name for the paramesonephric duct is the Mullerian duct. So because this is the Mullerian inhibitory factor or the anti-Mullerian hormone, is going to cause degeneration of this paramesonephric duct. So they will degenerate. So it is only the mesonephric duct that will persist and form the internal duct structures in the male. Now, you guys already know where the paramesonephric duct is coming from. It's the duct of the mesonephros, which is part of what forms the interim kidney in the embryo. You guys remember that from our knowledge of the kidneys, renal system. So, because of the presence of the
Which one?
Mullerian,
The mesonephros.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, right, Abi?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes.
So the Mullerian inhibitory factor will cause the Mullerian dot to degenerate, and it will allow the mesonephric dot to persist. So what are the structures that are now derived from this mesonephric dot? They are just structures that are continuous with our testes. You can see they are attached together. So you just immediately form your epididymis that is connected to your testes, form the ductus deferens, forms the ejaculatory duct, the the and as well as the seminal vesicle. So four things. The acronym is SEED, SEED. S, seminal vesicle. E, the epididymis. The other E, ejaculatory duct. Then the D, ductus deferens. But the way they actually follow is that, okay, you have your seminal vesicle first, then immediately from your testes, the epididymis. From the epididymis, your ductus deferens emerges. The ductus deferens to your ejaculatory duct. That is all. Those are the internal duct derivative of the male. What will now form the external genitalia is the prostate, the penis, and the scrotum. The prostate, the penis, and the scrotum. Though I'm not supposed to be explaining this here, but when we get to that area, we'll just keep it because we have already moved it here. So the external genitalia, prostate, the scrotum, and the penis. External genitalia. The external genitalia development is under the influence of dihydrotestosterone in males before puberty. You have to pay attention to that stuff. Before puberty, differentiation of the external genitalia in males is under the influence of DHT. But after puberty, the control is under the influence of testosterone. Now, we are done with the male side. Let's go to the female side. The female baby is made, XS, there is no Y chromosome. So that means there's no testis determining factor. So there's no testis determining factor. So that means that testis is not formed. The ovaries will form immediately. So if the ovaries are formed, this mesonephric dot automatically degenerates. It will degenerate. Now, if the mesonephric dot degenerates, the paramesonephric dot will persist. Because, of course, there's no Sertoli cells to be releasing Mullerian inhibitory factor. So that means that in females, the paramesonephric dot will persist and form the internal dot structures. What are the internal dot structures in females? The internal dot structures include structure that just continues with the ovaries too. The fallopian tube, number 1. The uterus, number 2. The cervix, number 3. Then the proximal vagina, number 4. Those are the 4 things. The fallopian tubes will lead to the uterus will lead to the cervix will lead to the proximal vagina. Who can remind us where the distal vagina comes from? Anybody? I mentioned it yesterday. Hello? The what?
And the
The distal part of the urogenital sinus.
Yes.
the
Yes.
lower,
The lower
Distal.
part.
The lower part of the
lower
urethra.
The lower part.
lower distal vagina.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So lower
Not the
vagina or
distal,
distal
like
vagina is
lower
coming from the
urogenital
urogenital sinus.
distal
Don't
vagina.
forget. Don't forget.
Yeah.
Now, we are done with formation of the
Lower.
internal duct.
Okay.
The last thing is now to talk about external genitalia. What is in control of formation of the external genitalia in the females is the estrogen. Now, the estrogen is coming from the ovaries that have developed. So what are these external genitalia structures? Your distal vagina, the vulvar derivatives, and the clitoris. So the clitoris, the vulvar derivative talking about the labia majora, the labia minora, then the distal vagina. Those are the external genitalia. Just like in males that we have the prostate, the scrotum, and the penis. So the homologue of the penis in the female is the clitoris. The homologue of the the labia majora in males is the scrotum. So we can just say that the lamina minora to the prostate. So let's go. Let's go. So now, what's the clinical correlate of this? Now, I think I mentioned that the mesonephric duct actually develops under the influence of androgens. So it's the androgens that are produced that allows the mesonephric duct to develop. The Sertoli cells will have released Mullerian inhibitory factor that will cause paramesonephric duct to degenerate. But what will now cause that mesonephric duct to persist is the Leydig cell secreting androgens. So I must not forget that. So I've told us that the paramesonephric duct give rise to the internal structures in the females, which include the fallopian tube, the uterus, as well as the proximal vagina. Now, I must mention that, okay, in males, there's degeneration of the paramesonephric duct, right? The paramesonephric duct degenerates, but there are some area that will remain. This area is called the appendix testis. The way to remember the naming is just remember that anything that ends with testis will be found in males. So we know that the structure that is degenerating in males is the paramesonephric duct. So a little remnant will persist, which we call the appendix testis. In females, the structure that is degenerating is the mesonephric duct. The mesonephric duct will degenerate, but there will be a little area that will persist in the females. It is known as a Gartner's duct. The Gartner's duct. Now, in some females, they can have a genesis of the Mullerian duct. The Mullerian duct, of the Mullerian duct, yeah. So the Mullerian duct might not even form. So in that kind of person, that means that person will not have fallopian tube. The person will not have uterus. The upper part of the vagina will not be found, will not be formed. So that means the person will have absent uterus and a blind vaginal pouch. So of course, someone that has absence of the uterus, the person will not menstruate when it's time to menstruate. So there will be primary amenorrhea. It's not secondary, primary, because the person will not even have any menstrual experience because the uterus has never formed. It's never present. But the person will still have a normal external genitalia and secondary sexual characteristics because formation of the external genitalia is under the influence of estrogen and is not related to the internal duct. The secondary sexual characteristics is also due to estrogen, which are secreted from the ovaries. So if the ovaries are working fine, they can stimulate the differentiation of the external genitalia as well as the secondary sexual characteristics. So Mullerian agenesis is also known as the Mayer-Rokitansky-Kolsa-Horsa syndrome. You guys don't need to know this name. Just know Mullerian agenesis. That's what they are going to ask you guys. So we don't need to know the Mayer-Rokitansky whatever. So how will they present? They will not form the structure that are derived from the Mullerian duct, which includes the uterus, the proximal vagina, the fallopian tube too. But the ovaries will be there because ovaries is from the gonads, not the internal duct. Ovaries will be functional. And because the ovaries is functional, it will be discharging estrogen. The estrogen will allow the external genitalia to form, as well as the secondary sexual characteristics. Now, the Mullerian duct or the paramesonephric duct, they are associated with the mesonephric duct. So if someone has problem with the paramesonephric duct, there's possibility of the person having some renal issues too, because we know that the mesonephric duct forms the renal system and they are together. So it is not uncommon for you to see someone with Mullerian agenesis also having renal agenesis too with it, because your mesonephric duct is also shared with your paramesonephric duct. So it's important we note that. So I've told us, structures that are formed from the mesonephric duct, which include the seminal vesicles, the epididymis, the ductus deferens, and the ejaculatory duct. And this mesonephric duct degenerates in the females, and what persists is the Gartner's duct. So, do you guys understand the formation of the gonads, the internal genitalia, and the external genitalia in both male and female now? Or I should go over it again? Hello, guys. You guys are not speaking, no. Hello? Hello,
I
what
think
did you
what will
guys say?
help us like solidify is like maybe questions or something
Yes.
like
You said? Yeah, we don't have much questions on it. That's the thing. You know, majority of all this part that we are still taking, we don't really have much questions on it.
that.
So that's why, I'm
Mm.
just
So
postponing
basically
the
you have
questions till later. Hello? 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 Are you guys there?
Yeah, we are here, Dr. Baba.
Yes.
you can't hear me.
Okay, I can hear you now. I can hear you
Professor.
now.
Dr. Baba speaking.
Okay, so I was going to try and summarize what you said.
Okay, yes. Please, I'll be happy if you can.
So when you have like an undifferentiated gonad, initially undifferentiated gonad, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if it happens to be a male where you have like Y chromosome,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when you have that SRY gene on the Y chromosome that produces the testis determining factor,
Okay.
which will now lead to testis development.
Yes.
So in order for there to be testis development, now that the paramesonephric duct has to undergo degeneration. So that's where there'll be secretion of Mullerian inhibitory factor or anti-Mullerian hormone
Okay, so
by
wait,
Sertoli cells.
Dr. Francois, let me just make a little correction from there. Now, the way you look at it is you talk about the
Hmm?
gonad,
Huh?
you talk about the gonad, you talk about the internal duct,
Today I said I will come. I just we can chop the thing that we need
you talk about the external genitalia. Dr. Francois, are you still with me?
to boil it
The
chicken.
gonad,
Yeah, I'm
the,
with
the
you. Dr. Lushala, please, can you kindly mute? Yeah, I'm
okay.
with you. I can hear you.
So the gonad, the internal duct, and the external genitalia. So they develop separately. So the gonad, you've talked about the gonad. So what will now form from the gonad? The testes. What are the cells in the testes? Sertoli and Leydig. Sertoli will now release MIF, Mullerian inhibitory, that is now going to influence what will happen to the internal duct. So what will happen to the internal duct? Because Sertoli is now releasing Mullerian inhibitory factor, it will cause the Mullerian duct to degenerate. Leydig will now secrete androgen to stimulate development of the mesonephric duct. So what are the components of the mesonephric duct? The seed, seminal
Okay,
vesicle.
sorry. Now I'm a bit lost. You said so we should. Are you separating this into three things? You said gonads, internal duct, and then external duct.
No, not external duct, external genitalia. So gonads,
Uh-huh.
internal duct, and external genitalia. Exactly. Yes. So that's the
Okay,
way you
so
look at
starting from the gonads.
it. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you've said that you've all those things that you've said lead to the formation of the testes. Now, when the testes now develop, the cells of the testes include Sertoli and the Leydig. Hmm? What's
Oh, okay.
what's the Sertoli secreting? Mullerian inhibitory factor.
Inhibitory factor, yeah.
So those ones will now go and affect those internal dots that we are still looking at indifferent stage. So in the indifferent stage, the two dots will be there, which is the paramesonephric and the mesonephric. So after the
Okay.
gonads have differentiated into the testes, they are now going to affect the differentiation of the internal dot too. So the testis
Okay.
contains Sertoli cells and Leydig cells. The Sertoli cells will now release Mullerian inhibitory factor that will now inhibit the Mullerian dot, which is also known as the paramesonephric dot, so that paramesonephric dot can go. Now, Leydig cells, which is also one of the cells within the testes, will release androgens, testosterone, that will now cause the mesonephric dot that is staying to develop. So that mesonephric dot, what will it develop into? It will form the seed, which is a seminal vesicle, the epididymis that is coming from the testes directly, connecting to the ductus deferens, then to the ejaculatory duct. Do you get it? That is all about the internal duct. Then lastly, you now look at what happens to the external genitalia. So external genitalia is now, your prostate, your scrotum, and the penis. So, and those ones are actually formed by two things. Initially, before puberty, is due to the DHT, your dihydrotestosterone. So after puberty, it is due to the influence of testosterone. So before puberty, the penis forming, the scrotum forming, the prostate forming is due to DHT. After puberty, lengthening of the penis, widening of the scrotum is due to testosterone. Do you get it now, Dr. Francois?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay.
I get it better.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the female pathway now? Let's look at the female pathway.
Okay, so applying what you said similarly. Okay, so first you have undifferentiated gonad.
Mm-hmm.
So you have everything mesonephric, paramesonephric.
Mm-hmm.
But now the difference with the female is that since we don't have there's no SRY gene, no Y chromosome, so there's no testis determining factor.
Okay.
So now mesonephric, right?
Hello? So
Hello, can you hear me?
what gonad will first develop?
So you have the paramesonephric duct.
No. Before you get to the internal duct, you know you have to talk about the gonad first. The gonad.
Yeah. So the ovaries.
So the ovaries will form because there's no
Yes,
testis determining factor.
exactly.
So ovaries will form. So what
Exactly.
next?
So now when the ovaries form,
Mm-hmm.
then the ovaries will now stimulate the differentiation of the internal duct and then the external genitalia, right?
Okay, so that is what I failed to mention, or I did not mention it well. So when the ovaries form, the ovary is not actually in
Mm-hmm.
control of that internal duct. That one is natural. Once the ovary develops, the
Okay.
mesonephric duct will degenerate immediately,
Okay.
and the
Okay.
paramesonephric duct will persist because there is no Sertoli cells to release MIF to inhibit the paramesonephric
Okay.
duct. So paramesonephric duct will develop. So the ovaries will now influence development of the external genitalia, which is due to estrogen from the ovaries. So I want you to take it again now. Take it again now. And you now be telling me all the structure
Okay.
that is formed from each of the regions, like the gonad, the duct, the external. You now tell me everything. All right, let's go.
Okay. So we have an undifferentiated gonad, and then we have two X chromosomes.
Okay.
So meaning two X chromosomes will result in the formation of an ovary.
Yes.
And you said, so once we have the ovary developing, then now the mesonephric duct will undergo degeneration,
Yes.
and the paramesonephric duct will develop.
Yes.
Right. So once the paramesonephric duct develops, then now we'll have differentiation of. Sorry, what did you say? You said it's not the ovaries that differentiate. So naturally, there'll just be differentiation of the internal duct and then the external genitalia, right?
Yeah. So what is the internal dot that is selectively developing in female is the parameso. The meso is that those ones have
Oh,
degenerated. So what are the
yes.
structures that are now formed from the paramesonephric duct?
From the paramesonephric duct. Okay. So since we are looking at the end, so those will be the top structures. So the internal ones, the fallopian tubes,
Fallopian tube,
the uterus,
uterus,
fallopian tubes, uterus, the upper part of the vagina,
the upper part of the
and
vagina.
then
Cervix,
and then what?
Yeah,
no,
they are
the
just joining.
cervix and then
They are
the upper
joining
part of
the
the vagina.
they are joining the cervix to the uterus. That's it. So just say fallopian tube, uterus, and proximal
Okay,
vagina.
okay.
Okay, the cervix, exactly, yeah, because
Mhm.
I remember there was one more thing.
So
Okay,
that is it.
yeah, I got that.
So the external
Right.
genitalia will not
And
come
then
from.
you were like the external genitalia during puberty is by DHT for the male, and
Yes. So
after
for the
puberty
females,
is testosterone.
so for the females,
Should be
For the females,
estrogen.
estrogen during
estrogen.
puberty.
So what are the derivative of external genitalia in females?
Yeah, so that's where you are looking at your the distal part of the vagina,
Okay,
the vulva,
the vulva,
where you have
Mhm.
the vestibule. It's called, what's that area called? The vestibulum, right, or something.
Labials,
the labias,
No, they
exactly,
have
the
the
labia
labia.
yeah. So
majora
the
and
labia majora,
minora.
Mm-hmm,
minora, the vestibule, yeah,
mm-hmm.
labia
The
majora,
most
minora,
And
pubis,
the vestibule
I'm
of the
not
and
vagina.
sure.
then
Okay, okay.
Yes. And then the clitoris.
Then the clitoris. That's it.
I don't think is the mons pubis part. I don't think
The
so.
mom boobies is
Wait a
just
minute.
ah well, it's part of the vulva. The mom pubis is part of the vulva. So mom
Please, all
pubis.
these things you guys just called are from where, please?
The what?
Influenced by estrogen. All
Yeah.
these the external genitalia, they are derived from where?
So yeah, so we'll talk about the derivative of the external genitalia later. That one too is complex. I will
Okay,
separately
okay,
explain that
okay.
one. We will understand it very well when we get to that point. Don't worry.
All these clitoris that they just finished calling is from where? Is it
Yes.
derivative?
So maybe I will have to mention it. Since you've stimulated it, I have to mention it. So to form the external genitalia, they actually come from a different structure. Now, the external genitalia has its own in different form. Now, what are the four in different stages? Number one, they have a genital tubercle. I think I have to go to that image so that we can. I don't want to be saying it, so that you guys can see the way it actually works. Now, you guys can appreciate this. This is the way it looks like, undifferentiated. There's a genital tubercle. There is an opening that we call the urogenital sinus here. There's a fold of tissue that surrounds the urogenital sinus that we call the urogenital fold. Then there's another swelling that surrounds the urogenital fold that we call the labioscrotal swelling. So everything that forms the external genitalia comes from these four undifferentiated structures. Do you guys get this? Genital tubercle, urogenital sinus, surrounded by urogenital fold, and of course the labioscrotal swelling that is surrounding them. Do you guys get that part?
No.
Yeah.
So there's a genital tubercle. There is a urogenital sinus. This urogenital sinus is surrounded by urogenital fold. Then urogenital fold is also surrounded by labioscrotal swelling. Is it clear now?
Okay, okay. So like the main thing is actually the genital groove.
No, forget about the genital
So
groove.
it's just like the normal anatomy, right?
Yes, just like the
It's just
normal
like the
body.
normal
Just like the normal.
anatomy. Yeah, where you are seeing.
No,
Yeah,
no,
the
I'm
groove
talking
is
about
just
the.
like where the introduce see. The genital tubercle is like. I'm just trying to say that there's the genital tubercle. There's the fold. The fold is now surrounded by.
Mhm.
Hello.
Yes. So all these things will actually have differentiation. They will have things they will differentiate into. You see, what you are looking at
I'm
is
actually particular about it
undifferentiated.
because they all
So
form something.
Do you understand
so
what I'm
this
saying?
urogenital sinus, is it the one from that cloaca too?
Yes. This urogenital sinus is the one
Yeah.
from the cloaca.
So this
So,
is the proximal part.
mhm.
No, this
No, this
should
is the
be.
urogenital
It's
sinus
going
itself.
to be
It's not proximal or distal. This is the urogenital
or
sinus we are
this.
looking at.
Okay.
Do you understand? So it's the proximal fat that will now be forming the bladder. Do you get? So we can say that what you are looking at is the distal. Look at the person is in the dichotomy position. So it's the distal that you are seeing. Do you understand, Dr. Olufemi?
Mm, yeah.
The
No, me, I'm
proximal fat
thinking
is
you are saying the distal part, but it's forming the is it the proximal vagina it forms?
so that is it.
That part.
So it's you
Okay.
know that we said that the proximal vagina is part of the internal duct. So it will not be forming the proximal vagina. Do you get? Hello?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Distal vagina
It's
rather.
part
Distal
of
vagina. So you
Santoda.
guys should not confuse this thing. Distal vagina,
Mm-hmm.
that is it. Oh. Distal vagina is coming from your urogenital sinus. Now, the four major things that will form the external genitalia derivative of male and female is those four things I've mentioned. Your genital tubercle, your urogenital sinus surrounded by urogenital fold, and of course there's a labioscrotal swelling surrounding the urogenital fold. Once you know this, you cannot forget it again. That's all you need. Now, if this guy is now going to go towards male, DHE, we have said that what influences formation of external genitalia in male is DHT. DHT will now come. It will now cause,
Party, right?
yes, before puberty. Do you understand? Before puberty. Hello?
Before puberty is DHT, and it
Yes,
forms penis, scrotum, and prostate.
yes. So let's look at
Okay.
how those guys come about now. Now, this genital tubercle, if this guy is actually differentiating towards the male, genital tubercle is going to elongate as a penis, as a glans penis. Are you guys with me? As a glans penis. You know that we cannot just say penis. Penis is made up of so many things. Penile urethra is part of the penis. Your urethra is part of the penis. The glans is part of the penis. But the sorry guys, can we mute ourselves? I'm hearing someone, you know, making some stuff.
Okay, Dr. Franklin.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So this genital tubercle will elongate and form the glans penis, like you can see here. If it's the female, it will remain like this and form the glans clitoris. It will not elongate the glans clitoris. So that means that the homologue of the glans clitoris is actually the glans penis. Now the next thing is now that this fold is now going to close over the sinus. It's going to close together. When you have closing of the fold, you form the penile urethra. In the females, this fold will not close. It will remain open and to form the labia minora. You guys can see here, this guy here, labia minora. The urogenital fold will close in male and form the penile urethra, like we are seeing here. But in females, it will not close. It will remain open like that and form the labia minora. Then, this sinus, the sinus is actually like an opening, like a cavity. So they are going to differentiate into glands. Now, what are the glands that we are looking at for the males? The prostate gland and the bulbourethral gland of Cowper's. So they are different from the seminal vesicle. Where is the seminal vesicle coming from?
From the Mullerian, Abi? From the mesonephric, rather.
From the
Mesonephric.
From the mesonephric duct. Mesonephric duct is the one that forms the seed. SEED. The seminal vesicle, the epididymis, that will lead to the ductus different, that will lead to the ejaculatory duct. You guys will now remember that your ejaculatory duct empties into the penile urethra. It empties into the prostatic urethra, rather, the urethra, the prostatic urethra. And you know that the prostate itself is an external genitalial structure. Do you guys get it? So your ejaculatory duct is the last or is the bus stop for the internal duct in males. Anything beyond your ejaculatory duct, they are the structures derived from the what's it called? The external genitalial stuffs. Now, I've said it. Your genital sinus, your genital sinus will form the cavity. The cavity, which will form glands. And what are these glands that we are looking at? The prostatic gland and the bulbourethral gland. Your genital sinus will also form the upper part of the bladder and the urethra. Are you guys now? So you guys should be able to connect it. You know that I said the internal duct actually stop at the level of ejaculatory duct. The ejaculatory duct empties into the prostatic urethra. If you check the anatomy, the ejaculatory duct empties into the prostatic urethra. That's why they say that the ejaculatory duct is the point where you have, or the point where the ejaculatory duct empties into the prostatic urethra is where you have the reproductive tract joining with the genitourinary tract. Sorry, the urinary tract. If you guys remember from our anatomy back then when we were med school, they used to say that where the ejaculatory duct empties into the prostatic urethra, that is where you have the genital tract, which is the ejaculatory duct, joining with the urinary tract, which is the prostatic urethra. The urethra itself is coming from the urogenital sinus, like the bladder. The prostate too is coming from the urogenital sinus, because the urogenital sinus is a cavity that will differentiate into glands. It differentiates into the bladder, it differentiates into the urethra, it differentiates into the distal vagina. Now, what is the glands that are coming from the urogenital sinus in males? The prostatic gland and the bulbourethral gland. If it's the female, it's going to form two glands too. Your paraurethral gland or your urethral gland. Those ones are the homologue of the prostate. It will also form the greater vestibular gland. Those ones are the homologue of our bulbourethral glands. Please, guys, I want to take it one by one so that I will not confuse you guys. Let's start again. The genital tubercle will elongate in male to form glans penis. It will remain to form glans clitoris. The next thing is to look at the urogenital fold. Urogenital fold is just below the glans. It will close in male and form the penile urethra. In females, it will not close. It will remain open and form the labia minora. So that means that the labia minora and the penile urethra are coming from the urogenital fold. The next thing is to look at the sinus, because the fold closes over the sinus. The sinus is an opening, form a cavity that forms some glands. What are the glands in the males? Prostate and the bulbourethral glands. What are these glands in females? The greater vestibular gland, as well as the oh my god, I'm sorry, I should be showing you guys just below. So you can see the derivative of urogenital sinus, the bulbourethral glands and the prostate itself. While in females, the greater vestibular glands and the urethra and the paraurethral gland. Now, this urethra and the paraurethral glands of Skene are the homologue of the prostate gland. The bulbourethral gland of Cowper are the homologue of the greater vestibular gland of Bartholin in females. You guys can see what is driving the external genitalia, estrogen. You guys can see what is driving the external genitalia in males, dihydrotestosterone. Now, let's go back. The last one we've not talked about is the labioscrotal swelling. Very easy to remember. Labioscrotal swelling too will close together and form the scrotum. This one here. In females, it will not fuse together. It will remain open and form the labia majora. That's why the labia majora is the homologue of the scrotum. Now let's go back to what we have below. The starting is the genital tubercle. So I've not talked about some part of the genital tubercle, but let's go together. Genital tubercle will form the glans clitoris and the glans penis. Another quick way to remember it is that the genital tubercle will also form the erectile tissue in both the glans penis and the clitoris that surround the clitoris. The vestibule or the vestibular bulbs in females is the erectile tissue. You know, when they are stimulated, the tissue that gets erected in the females is the vestibular bulbs. In the males, it is the corpus cavernosum and the corpus spongiosum. So all those things are formed from the genital tubercle. The next thing is to go to the urogenital sinus. I've told us that that one is a cavity that forms glands. What are the glands? Bulbourethral gland and the prostate gland in males. So what is the female derivative? For the bulbourethral derivative, is equivalent to the greater vestibular gland. For the prostate, it is the paraurethral gland and the urethral gland of Skene. The urogenital fold will close over each other and form the ventral shaft of the penis or the penile urethra. In the female, it will not close, it will open and form the labia minora. It is the labioscrotal swelling that form the labia majora and the scrotum. So can you guys say it again? Anybody? Or is it clear?
So you said
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
the
Go ahead, Dr. Elizabeth.
like the genital tubercle, you said it will elongate in male, forming the glans penis, and that it forms the glans clitoris in female.
Okay.
Then you now said the one that can be the part of the genital tubercle that can be stimulated, that get elongated.
Okay.
In male, it is corpus cavernosum, and that in female is the vestibular bulb.
Yes.
So
Cavernosum and spongiosum from
okay. So then you now said again that the urogenital fold in male, it closes to form the penile urethra.
Fantastic.
And that in female, it forms the open. It is open. It remains open to form the labia minora.
Yes.
So then you said in the urogenital sinus is an opening.
Okay.
Normally, then in male, it forms the prostate and the bulbourethra.
Yes.
And then in female, it forms the it forms the, you said paraurethra and the greater vestibular gland of
You tried.
Bartholin's, abi?
In fact, you tried, sir. You tried. So which one is the bulbourethral gland equivalent to in the female?
Bulbourethral gland
Gland.
in the female is equivalent to greater vestibular gland of Bartholin.
Exactly. So that's the homologue. So what's the homologue of the prostate?
Is Bartholin is knowing it as Bartholin? Is it okay? Just
Yes,
Bartholin's
you can
gland.
know
Is
it
it
as
okay?
Bartholin.
It's Bartholin's gland.
It's also Bartholin. Yes. It's also Bartholin. So the prostate is equivalent to what? Hello?
It's
What?
equivalent to urethra and
What?
paraurethral glands of skin.
Exactly. So the prostate is equivalent to the urethra and paraurethral gland. So what is the last one?
Okay.
Then the labioscrotal swelling.
Okay.
That one is in female, it is labia majora,
Okay.
and in male, it is the scrotum.
Yes. So to now be sure that you guys now remember it now. So I'm coming. This is what I would do to be sure that you remember it. Because once you know this, that means you remember it. I'm coming. So um so Dr. Olushola, what are the indifferent structures that makes up all these external genitalia? So list those indifferent structures again.
The genital tubercle,
Okay.
the urogenital fold,
Okay.
the urogenital sinus,
Okay.
then the labioscrotal swelling.
You can see. So if you can remember those guys like that, you know what comes from them. You can see that it's very easy. If you see any question on it, you will easily, trash it. So you guys should not forget the Mullerian agenesis though. You guys know how they will present Mullerian agenesis. We should not forget. So we have skipped. Let's just go.
Is that one Moyokita Costa?
That's the
Okay.
major. So yeah. So what we have here? What we have here is just a
Moyokitansky.
yeah.
Costa Hausa.
Hausa. Meyarokitaski. Costa ulcer syndrome. So what we have here is just what we have.
Now what?
So the indifferent gonads. So if it is XY, it's commit towards the testes for the gonads. If it's XS, there's no SRY, it goes towards the ovaries. Now, if it forms the testes, what are the two cells from the testes? Leydig and Sertoli. They will release their independent hormone. So Sertoli is going to release MIF. This guy is going to release testosterone, which is the Leydig. Now, MIF is now going to affect the internal duct. We are now looking at the internal duct now. So the internal duct is actually the primary sexual characteristic, while the external genitalia is what makes up the I'm wrong with that. The external genitalia and the internal genitalia makes up the primary sexual characteristics, while the secondary sexual characteristics are the things like the pubic hair, the axillary growth, and all those things. So if this guy, develop the Sertoli cells and the Leydig cells, Sertoli is going to release the MIF that will go and inhibit paramesonephrine. So this one is already gone. So that means that it is only this one that is remaining. Sertoli will release testosterone that will go and activate this guy so that it can commit to formation of the seed, seminal vesicle, epididymis, ejaculatory duct, and the ductus deferens. Now, testosterone is going to be converted by 5-alpha reductase to DHT that will drive the external genitalia to form the penis, the scrotum, and the prostate. So you guys are still with me. Hello, are you guys still with me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm coming. I had a call. I want to tell the person I will call. Yeah. So now the androgens, also the testosterone, drive the development of the secondary sexual characteristics. What are them? What are those? the pubic hair development, the axillary hair development, and facial hair development, and of course, development of the external genitalia later at puberty. And what do you have at puberty? Elongation of the penis, both in size and length, as well as growth sprouts. All these things are under the influence of testosterone. Now let's look at what happens in the female. XX is a chromosomal sex, XX. Ovaries develops immediately. And I've told us once ovary develops, you don't even need anything to inhibit mesonephric. Mesonephric goes out immediately. The paramesonephric will develop. The paramesonephric will develop. So if paramesonephric develop, it will form the internal genitalia, which include the fallopian tube, the uterus, and the proximal vagina. The ovaries are releasing two things because we are done with the external genitalia. The next one is now the external. So the ovaries are releasing two things, estrogen and a little bit of testosterone. The estrogen, like we talked about, drives the formation of the external genitalia. What are the things in the external genitalia we're talking about? Distal vagina from the genital sinus, the labial, both the majora and the minora. The majora from our labioscrotal swelling, the minora from our urogenital fold, then the clitoris, which is from our genital tubercle. The estrogen will also help to develop some of the secondary sexual characteristics, which include breast development, but the pubic hair and the axillary hair growth is still under the influence of testosterone, just like what we have in males. But breast development is estrogen. That is all. I hope I have, refreshed your memory a little bit. Now, let's go to the clinical correlates. So in some condition, an individual can have absence of the Sertoli cells. And when there's absence of
Dr.
Sertoli
Lorena,
cells,
before you leave that place,
okay,
where does in B come in all of this?
inhibin,
In B.
the what?
That's from FSH.
In B.
Yeah, so
That's from
inhibin,
FSH.
no, inhibin B is not from FSH. Inhibin B just inhibits FSH. Inhibin B is coming from the
Oh,
Sertoli cells.
inhibits FSH.
So when
It's from where?
Sertoli cells, Sertoli.
Settle here. Okay.
So when we get to the spermatogenesis proper, we'll talk about the function of Sertoli.
Okay. So that one is not even in the
Nini bin
differentiation.
Henko.
I don't know if inhibin A exists, Dr. Lushola.
Dr. Babari, I want to
If you
understand this
have
thing.
B,
I don't mind Dr. Lushola.
What
Please,
is
it's only in it doesn't have anything to do with the sexual with the organ formation. It
no
is
no
in
no no
spermatogenesis,
no no
right?
no 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 it's just spermatogenesis. That's it.
Okay.
Mhm. So absence of Sertoli cells or lack of Mullerian inhibitory factor. So what happens? So it means that you can only appreciate this abnormality if that person is a male, because you know that in females automatically there's no Sertoli cells. You guys remember now, there's no Sertoli cells. But if someone is a male and there's no absence of Sertoli cell, there is a problem. So that means that that person will not be able to secrete the Mullerian inhibitory factor. And of course, you guys remember that mesonephric duct develops in the male due to Leydig stimulation. And the paramesonephric degenerates due to the release of MIF. So if there's no MIF to inhibit paramesonephric duct, that means that both paramesonephric and the mesonephric will develop. So that means the male will develop both male and female internal genitalia. Are you guys still with me? So you guys need to understand this very well in case they paint that clinical scenario that they tell you someone has both male.
Please kindly repeat yourself. Kindly repeat yourself.
So
Thank you.
we are looking at a Dr. Francis. So we are looking at a male, and this male doesn't have Sertoli cells. That means that there's nothing to release the Mullerian inhibitory factor. That means there's nothing to inhibit the growth of paramesonephric duct. Of course, they did not tell us that this person lacks Leydig cells. So that means that the Leydig cells are there, and they are going to, of course, stimulate the growth of the mesonephric duct. But they did not have Sertoli cell. That means that there's no release of Mullerian inhibitory factor. So there's nothing inhibiting paramesonephric duct. So mesonephric duct will develop. So both mesonephric and paramesonephric duct will develop in that male. Do you get that, Dr. Francois?
Yes, I do. I do. Thanks.
So, and we know that what actually forms the gonads, the external genitalia, is from DHT, and DHT is coming from testosterone. So if this guy lacks, and you know that testosterone is actually coming from, the um the gonads. So if the gonads are not actually well developed, there's a high chance that the testosterone secretion of that person will be, will be very low. So that's one of the, okay, it's not actually very relevant, but for this presentation to even happen, it's possible that this person has a stick gonad, that the Sertoli cells are actually, are plastic, or they are not just there. So the person will have presentation of both male and female internal genitalia. And of course, the external genitalia is going to develop because Sertoli, the Leydig cell, is going to be functioning to secrete testosterone, which will drive, the formation of the development of the external genitalia. DHT is actually coming from testosterone. So if the Leydig cells are intact, the person can secrete testosterone, which will get converted to DHT, that will cause development of the external genitalia. So that one will be okay. But the only problem we're having here is the Sertoli cell problem. So that means, our MIF is absent. So paramesonephric is not inhibited to persist. So just to remind us, so if paramesonephric degenerates in males, what is the remnant of paramesonephric dot in males?
The appendix testis.
Okay, the appendix testis. So what's the derivative of or the remnant of the mesonephric dot in females?
Gas adduct.
Gartner dot.
The
Gardner dot.
Yeah, so we are okay with that one. So just always remember, when you see a condition in which there's development of both male and female external genitalia, you see the person having seminal vesicle, epididymis, and all those things with fallopian tube and all those things. That is absence of Sertoli cell they are talking about. Now, another very important stuff to know is the 5-alpha reductase deficiency.
So that means those people, they will not have external genitalia
No,
for
they will
female.
have.
They will not have female external.
They will have male external genitalia.
Oh, they will have a female external, right? Female external, right?
No.
Me, I thought they won't have female external.
No. You know that the people you are looking at, they're already male. So you cannot say they won't have female. Because the people you are looking at are males.
Okay.
This condition you are seeing is a male condition. Because you don't expect a female to have Sertoli cells. So Sertoli cell absence is normal in females. Do you guys get it? So if you have absence of Sertoli cell, that means,
yeah, that makes sense.
You get it now. So that means that we are looking at the problem in a male.
So the formation of the male system is not complete. So this person is supposed to be a male because there's the SRY gene already. But Sertoli is not available cause the complete male differentiation.
Yes, but the Leydig cells, they are there. The Leydig cells,
yeah.
Are there. So the reason why you can actually form the male internal genitalia as well as the male external genitalia is due to the presence of the Leydig. But the reason why you are having the female internal genitalia coexisting with the male internal genitalia is because there is no Sertoli cell to inhibit
the absence of Sertoli.
The parameter.
Right.
Do you guys get
Thank you. Yes.
So that is the way that works.
It's just the Sertoli not shutting out the female one. The MIA, the Mullerian inhibitory is not available. So we'll still be seeing the female characteristics, internal genitalia in that guy.
Exactly. That's what I want to hear. Internal genitalia. That is it. So you'll be seeing fallopian.
But my question is.
Okay.
No, sorry. Please finish. Sorry.
No, I'm done, Dr. Francois. I'm done.
Okay, so I was gonna ask, if you have the testes producing Leydig cells, what will happen such that you won't have Sertoli cells being produced?
Exactly. So Dr. Vansiwa, as you are curious, I'm also curious. I search and I search and I search.
Okay.
Well, I like your answer. Some things are idiopathic.
So
unexplained.
No, I'm just thinking about it now because if you have the testes and you have Leydig cells, how does you produce Sertoli too?
Yes. So I'm not
So we
looking
don't
for it
know. It was beyond
that
the scope.
what condition can cause absence of Sertoli cells. Guys, I did not see anything. If you guys search and you see it, please send it to me. The only one I saw is Sertoli cell syndrome. That is, they are telling us that it is Sertoli cell that is present, not Sertoli cells absent. In Sertoli cell syndrome, it is only Sertoli cell that is present and causing development. So I think it's just one of those things that USMLE just, just want us to know. So, the way they will frame the question, you don't worry about it. If they frame the question this way, what you will see in the option is absence of which of the following: Sertoli cell, Leydig cell. So you know what you pick. Do you understand also, Francois? So, but
Yeah, I do. I get it.
I could not really find, a syndrome that explains this. All right. So,
Yeah, that's fine. Thank
so
you.
5 alpha reductase deficiency is another very important. They test this one a lot. So the problem here is just that 5 alpha reductase is not present to allow conversion of testosterone to DHT. So that means that because the only relevance of DHT is actually in the early development, which is pre-pubertal development of the external genitalia before puberty. So that means that before puberty, the external genitalia of that person will be atypical. That male will be having just external genitalia of a female. So all the structures that are supposed to be closing, they will not be closing. Urogenital fold will not be fusing. Labioscotal swelling will not be fusing. Genital tubercle will not be getting elongated. So genital tubercle will be shortening as that of the clitoris. The urogenital fold will not close, it will open. It will be looking like something like the labia minora. The labioscotal swelling will not fuse too. So it will be looking like labia majora. So that's why they said that this person will actually have a normal male internal genitalia, because male internal genitalia is actually under the influence of testosterone, not DHT. I hope you guys remember. Testosterone stimulates the mesonephric duct. So it will go toward the male internal normal. But it is the external genitalia that will be atypical until puberty, when testosterone now takes over. So do you guys...
So DHT now.
Hello?
Until puberty, when DHT takes over.
Exactly.
Testosterone or
Good God.
DHT.
Oh, that's
What are you saying?
testosterone.
Sorry,
No,
no.
when
I thought you said
testosterone...
Normally, please say it
pre-puberty
again.
is
Please say it again,
DHT.
Dr. Babawale.
Post-puberty is testosterone.
Yes, yes.
Mhm, mhm.
Post-puberty is testosterone. Post-puberty is
Okay.
testosterone.
Okay. DHT is the one for formation of the external male genitalia
Yes, before puberty.
before puberty. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank
You
you.
know that you are going to form those external genitalia first. Then at puberty, you now have some changes that happen to that external genitalia. Like they start
Yeah.
to lengthen in size,
Locking, increasing in size.
all
Yeah.
those things. So that one can actually, testosterone later can actually, stimulate the atypical external genitalia and make it, you know, towards the male version with time after puberty. But someone that has 5 alpha reductase deficiency, because the person doesn't actually have problem of formation of testosterone, the person will get okay at puberty when testosterone takes over. So, but you know that the person will actually present with atypical external genitalia before puberty. Then at puberty, the external genitalia becomes that of the male, like it becomes normal to that of the male. So that's the concept of 5 alpha reductase deficiency. So look at this statement here. They said Leydig cells lead to male internal and external. This makes sense to us, right? Leydig cells lead to male internal and external genitalia, right? Does it make sense to us? Can anybody explain before we call it?
Because
If Leydig cell is the one producing testosterone,
Okay.
then that means the testis that is determining the internal genitalia in the embryo, in the fetus, is available. So the patient is going to have the normal internal genitalia. And then with the 5 alpha reductase that is changing testosterone to 5 DH to DHT, then there will now be DHT available for the external genitalia differentiation. That's what I understand this as. So.
Yeah, so you try with that internal genitalia, but you did not say this internal genitalia well. What forms the internal genitalia?
Testosterone, this thing, mesonephric duct.
Mesonephric duct. What stimulates the mesonephric duct?
Testosterone from the Leydig cells.
Testosterone from the Leydig cells. Now, just combine
Okay,
that.
so you wanted me to mention.
Exactly.
You wanted me to mention the mesonephric
I wanted
duct.
you to
Okay,
mention the
okay,
mesonephric duct.
okay,
It's
okay,
important. It's important. So that's the first one.
okay.
So they
And
now
then
said,
for females, it will be paramesonephric. Mesonephric has been would obliterate in them. Okay, thank you.
so look at this statement too. Sertoli cells shut down female internal differentiation. So who can explain this?
It shut down
It's just
paramesonephric
basically
duct.
what we've been saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It causes
Reproduce
evolution.
MIF.
What does it
Produces
do?
MIF.
Yes. Causes production of
It
MIF.
produces Mullerian inhibitory factor. So
Yes.
that will cause regression of the paramesonephric duct.
Yes. So the lady will now take over and stimulate the mesonephric duct so that they can now develop. So what's now the remnant of the paramesonephric duct in the male?
Appendix
That's not.
Appendix test.
testis. Appendix
So I
You
think
said,
testis.
wait, you said what's the remainder of the word paramesonephric
in the male,
in the male?
In the male.
what do you think will happen to
Appendix
paramesonephric in the male,
testis.
Dr. Juliet? What should happen to
I know
paramesonephric in the?
it will obliterate.
It will obliterate, but it's not everything that will obliterate. Some will remain. Do you get it? So the remnant is what we call the appendix testis. So just like what you have in the females too.
Okay.
What should obliterate in the female? Which duct should obliterate in the female, Dr. Juliet?
Mesonephric.
So what will now remain of the mesonephric?
Okay, that would not be the gatinar duct.
Gardner
Okay.
duct. So I know that there's no question they want to bring. This is actually the part that I feel you guys should know very well. But I think we are going to continue from here the next time. Or should we quickly take it? Or should we continue from next time?
I think that we should, if we can, my suggestion would be to complete the embryology part. It's not a lot. We might spend maybe 15-20 minutes so that the next time we'll just move to do you understand?
Francois is asking for embryology. I'm proud of
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, the
if
next
you
page
finish
is the anatomy, which is
yeah, because if you do the uterine anomalies, then the next thing will be the congenital penile anomalies, because we've already looked at the whole homolysis. And then the last thing is just some 2 lines. So I think we should finish embryology, but that's if everybody
we
else
can
is
actually.
So we should finish, Abby. All right, let me just quickly.
Let's
let's
listen
finish
from our
embryology.
daddies, the bosses.
Please, guys, I'm very sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I will only talk about.
Babale is tired.
I will only talk
yeah,
about
you tired? Okay, so
I will only talk about the uterus, please. We'll continue from the other one later. I'm tired.
okay, sure.
I'm tired.
Yes, please.
Now,
All right.
so there's something I'm supposed to say. Now, this paramesonephric duct.
After I pass this exam, I owe you a bottle of wine.
Shina wine, you won't give me. You don't want to give me a car. No,
Now why I won't give you? Now wait I see afford with that.
Don't give him money now.
Wait, Dr. Luatobi. What will happen is that I will wait till when you start residency so that I can get something that is better. Wine is too small.
I like you, very smart.
Patience. He has the spirit of patience.
Bukata ti pọ̀.
You have the patience to wait for good things.
Yeah, so that's the best tip. I wait. So I'll remind you, don't worry, I'll remind you the next by God's so let's go to the paramesonephric duct. So one thing you guys must remember about the paramesonephric duct is that they fuse together in the midline. They fuse together to form all those structures. That's why everything about the paramesonephric duct derivative, they are single. You have a single uterus, you have a single cervix, you have a single fallopian. You have a single what's it called? The single vagina. But it's actually the lower aspect that fuses. The proximal aspect doesn't fuse. That's why they form the two fallopian tubes. Please, the proximal part that forms the fallopian tube does not fuse, but the other area fuses. Now, the problem now starts if you now have the entire area not fusing. Although it can happen in grade. Maybe some part of the upper area is not the one that is not fusing, or maybe the entire part of the lower area is not fusing. Now let's look at them one by one. Septic uterus, this is the commonest. Now there's fusion, but normally there's supposed to be a resorption of the septum that forms following that fusion. This is the septum. If that septum fails to get removed, it can lead to formation of the septic uterus, which reduces the space for the baby or the embryo to get implanted, and it can result in some complication, including the fetal growth restriction, malpresentation, because the baby will not be able to turn. So it can just remain fixed in that position like that. And if the person is unlucky and the person is having the baby head facing up and the legs facing down, that's a malpresentation, because the baby cannot turn due to that narrow space from the septic uterus. It can cause a malpresentation. It can cause prematurity, because there could be preterm labor from that uterine anomaly, and of course spontaneous abortion. So those are they don't usually test those things, but it's good for us to know them. It's not hard. Spontaneous abortion, prematurity from preterm labor, fetal growth restriction due to reduced space for growth, and malpresentation. Now that is septate. Septate is very easy to recognize. Once you just look at the upper part and you are seeing the septum, that is septate. The way to treat it is to do septoplasty. You just remove that septum. It's the commonest form. The next one is biconate. Now in biconate, it's just due to failure of fusion of the proximal part after the fallopian tube. The next, the part that's just after that fallopian tube is supposed to fuse, but it doesn't fuse, which is the part that forms the uterus. I just want you guys to follow me the way I'm saying it. Just picture that, okay, there are two ducts that are coming together. The part that is outward, let me see if I can make I don't know if this one can help. Okay, let's say these are the paramesonephric ducts that are running downwards like this. Let me see if I can see better so that you guys can get what I'm saying. Okay, so let's say this is paramesonephric duct. So this proximal area, they do not fuse. They remain as a fallopian tube like that. Now it is this distal area that the fusion starts from. Now if this starting does not have fuse again, that's where you now have your biconate uterus coming from. So there's failure of fusion of the proximal portion, but the distal portion actually fuses. The proximal portion does not fuse, but the distal portion fuses. Now, if the proximal portion does not fuse, that means you have an indentation in that proximal portion. This is indentation. You guys remember that there's no indentation in your septate uterus, but there's an indentation in your biconate uterus. So that means you are having double uterus, but you're having a single vagina. That's the way to look at it, and it is due to incomplete fusion of the Mullerian duct. Where is this incomplete fusion occurring? The proximal portion of the Mullerian duct. I'm saying this incomplete fusion, I'm specifically mentioning the proximal area because you can see it in some questions. They will put it there, that incomplete fusion of the proximal, incomplete fusion of the distal, so that you know what to pick. So the incomplete fusion is actually at the proximal aspect. Here, this is it. So once you see an image like having an indentation in the middle, which is not extending to the vagina, that is your biconate uterus. Then the last one, there's
proxima. Okay.
So the uterine diaphysis, that one is, I think, okay. So you can see this. I'm trying to be careful what I say because I know where we are recording this. So, but just pay attention to this guy. You guys already know what I mean. I hope you guys can infer from what I'm saying.
Yeah, we get
Yeah.
you.
You guys can get what I'm saying. pay attention to this. So it's actually due to complete failure of fusion. So you see the proximal indentation and of course you see something that looks like a septum that separates that divides the vagina into two. So it will appear as if you're having two vaginas, two uterus, and two vaginas. So of course, and the two cervix too. So once you're having double of everything, that's your uterine deficit, and it is due to complete failure of fusion of the entire stuff. So
Okay, so both proximal and distal.
so
Okay, so wait. So proximal and distal Mullerian duct fusion. That is it, right?
yes,
Fusion of the Mullerian duct.
yes, proximal and
Mullerian
distal.
duct.
Complete
Okay,
failure.
thank you.
That's why they said. That's why they
Thank
use the
you.
word complete. So so you can just see something like septum in the vagina or something. Septum in the vagina, not in the upper part of the uterus. You already know that it's likely to be this feces. Or sorry, I can't pronounce it well. The dead feces or something. So septum in the vagina. It is not septate. It is because that is showing you that your vagina is also separated. In your septate uterus, it doesn't affect the vagina. It's just the proximal part of the uterus that septum has failed to get to resolve. Your biconate, there's indentation of the proximal aspect of the uterus. So it will as if you have a double uterus but single vagina. But here, double uterus, double vagina. So let's look at the imaging. Okay, this is not a very good one, but your septate and your biconate can actually look very similar if you check them on your hysterosalpingography, this dye, examination. But the way to look at them is that in your biconate, the indentation is more. It looks, deeper than your septate. That one is a little bit thick. So you can see here, it's thick, and the indentation is not as wide as. I don't pray that they give because it can actually be very difficult to differentiate using this dye. But rest assured, they are going to put some notes to the question. They are going to put some notes to the question that okay, maybe they find you know some septum in the internal aspect of the vagina, or maybe there's septum in the uterus, or maybe there's indentation, in between the two. They shall put something there that will guide you to so to help you make your diagnosis. But it's very, very easy to recognize if you are looking at images like this. If you are looking at images like you can easily tell. But this one, it might be hard, to pick. They look very similar. But I know that in septic, this anterior aspect, this medial aspect is usually very thick. In your biconate is very narrow because the indentation is actually from outside, not inside. So this inner area might be thinner than what you have in your septate too. This is not a very good image for the biconate. So guys, I think that's all for today. We'll take it up from here, from the hypospadias. It's very simple. We'll take it up from the hypospadia, go to descent, then start with the anatomy. So guys, do you have any questions before we
Thank
leave?
you.
Is there any question before we leave?
Mm,
I
Thank
think we'll just
you.
go and try and absorb what we've learned.
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe we can start from the first and second pharyngeal, like just do like a quick, maybe 10 minute recap, so that we can know if we can still remember. Tomorrow is the next discussion, right?
Mm-hmm. Tomorrow
Mm-hmm.
evening.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
It depends. Or
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow
in the
evening, yes,
evening.
evening,
Yeah,
yeah.
tomorrow evening, yeah.
So
So
Is
Dr.
it
Festus,
just
will you be
us
doing
or with the
renal?
main class?
no, Dr. Festus will take
It's
it.
Which
going
So
one
to be
is
just
it? I
us
don't know.
because we cannot have gotten here and then expect the whole class to
Yeah.
join us tomorrow. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So okay,
Maybe just
first takes renal in the morning, and then we do our own in the evening. Now with
in
Dr.
the
Papa.
evening.
exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the way to work.
All right, that's fine. All right, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Sure.